All of us have things we worry about, and many people have certain rituals or routines that they follow daily. But some people's worries and rituals get out of control.
It started a couple of years ago. I'd been driving for 3 or 4 years already without a problem. And one day driving home from work, I passed a cyclist on the way home. And that triggered a thought in my mind, what if I'd hit the cyclist? There was no evidence to suggest it or noise or anything. But I found the feel was quite persistent, and I decided to go around the block to make sure that nothing had happened. And I returned to the site a couple of times on that journey homeward, and the more I went to check, the more uncertain I felt about what could have happened. Over a period of a few months, it started becoming worse and worse, to the point that even driving within the road of my house, before I even got to the end of the road, I was already having thoughts about if I might have hit somebody along the way. I went to see a neurologist first, and within about 5 minutes of sitting there, he scrawled OCD in very large letters on a page and turned it around and said to me, "Here's your problem."
Obsessive-compulsive disorder is a type of anxiety disorder that often begins in early adult life. The illness afflicts 2 to 3% of the population across the spectrum.
The obsessive-compulsive disorder involves a combination of two types of symptoms. The one is obsessions and the other is compulsions. An obsession is essentially a thought, an image, an impulse or an urge that triggers discomfort and most of the time anxiety, but sometimes also agitation or irritability. And then that person would try to neutralize that thought, image, impulse or urge, typically using a set of compulsions. So compulsions are behaviors that are aimed at reducing the emotional distress that the obsession has triggered.
Individuals with OCD tend to hide their problem rather than seek help. They often are extremely successful in hiding their behavior and may delay therapy for many years. Unfortunately, this delay reduces the chances of successful treatment.
If you've developed OCD, there's probably someone in your family that either has had OCD or had OCD-like symptoms or had an anxiety disorder. So there's definitely a biological, a genetic predisposition. And then depending on environmental conditions, what kids learn, what they learn about dirt and germs, for instance, what they learn about doubt, what they learn about the meaning of the emotion of anxiety, will tend to determine whether they'd be likely to develop OCD or not. Historically, in terms of diagnosis, anything that's taken up more than an hour of your day means that you'd meet the diagnostic criteria for the syndrome, for obsessive-compulsive disorder. All of the symptoms of OCD are very normal for the general population, but it's about the frequency of those symptoms, the intensity of the distress, and how much it's interfering with the person's life that determines whether it's a syndrome that requires attention or not.
In order to understand OCD, it is first necessary to know something about the nature of obsessions and compulsions, and a psychotherapist can assist with this.
I went to see Bradley. It was difficult for me as practice was quite a long way from home, and with driving being what it was at that stage, it was a bit of a tricky journey. But after the first couple of sessions, I started feeling a lot more comfortable. Bradley helped me to understand that I wasn't alone in what I was feeling. Even after the first session, that was an immediate boost to me. And we slowly started breaking it down from the beginning to see what was causing it.
Treatment of OCD requires a combination of talk therapy and medication. The two are complementary, giving the person the best chance of managing their OCD in the long run.
Medication, we know, assists in treating symptoms of OCD because we know that there are particular pathways in the brain that are not working in the way that we would want them to, and that increases the risk of you developing OCD. And once you have OCD, those pathways function differently. They're not a miracle cure by any means, but they certainly play a role and are often necessary in assisting someone to get better, if not recover fully. The second option with regards to treatment, cognitive behavior therapy, we know is really the gold standard in terms of psychotherapy treatment for obsessive-compulsive disorder. So there are a variety of beliefs that someone might hold about the meaning of anxiety or the meaning of certain images or impulses or thoughts. that are faulty, that need to be corrected. Typically, the advice will be, well, why are you thinking this? Just don't think about it. But that's what someone with OCD is doing already. They're spending the whole day trying to get these thoughts and images out of their mind, and it doesn't work. We're not trying to change the thoughts and images that the person is having, but we're trying to change the way in which they think about those thoughts and images, the meaning that they make. And then the second component, which is the most heavily researched arm, is what we call exposure and response prevention. And that has to do with actually exposing yourself to the thought or the image or the urge that triggers the distress and not engaging in the compulsion. Say with Stephen, for instance, if he has the thought that he might have driven over somebody and then purposefully doesn't go back, what he would learn eventually is that nothing bad in all likelihood happened. His anxiety actually starts to diminish, and he starts to get to the point where the thoughts don't bother him so much anymore.
Through the exposure therapy, what we did was we looked at the kind of thoughts that I would typically have, and we processed them in terms of what did I interpret them to mean, and then the reality of, we have a lot of strange thoughts every day. We can't act on every thought that we have, and a thought is not a sign of something that you've done or something that's happened. So we found things started becoming easier. The checking frequency started dropping, and the less I checked, the more confident I became.
Support, patience and a positive attitude are the key ingredients to helping someone with OCD. These elements make treatment effective and more successful.
For people who feel as though they could be suffering from OCD, I think the best advice is to talk to somebody. Talk to your friends and family. It's great to have supportive people around you. If you try and keep it to yourself like I did for a few months, it is very difficult. And then investigate the cognitive behavioral therapy, because what it does is it helps you to understand that the way you're reacting is not in proportion to reality. And through that you can slowly start to build up your confidence, so that in those situations you're better equipped to handle them. You'll still have the situations, I still have them, but I can identify them now and I can get through them.